Something just happened at the highest level of the U.S. Justice Department that could reshape one of the most important power relationships in Washington. The newly confirmed Attorney General of the United States was asked a simple question. Would the Department of Justice operate independently from President Donald Trump? His answer was striking. No, I'm not going to pledge that. That single response has immediately put a major question at the center of American politics. How much independence should the Justice Department have from the president it ultimately serves? And why did Todd Blanche refuse to make a promise that many Americans might have expected to be automatic? Blanche made the comments on August 16th during an appearance on NBC's Meet the Press, just days after taking over as Attorney General. And this is not a minor position inside the federal government. The Attorney General is the nation's top law enforcement official. The Justice Department oversees federal investigations, prosecutions, and legal matters across the country. So when the person running that department says he will not pledge complete independence from the White House, Washington pays attention. Blanche did not simply refuse the pledge and stop there. He went further. He argued that the president should have a voice when it comes to individual federal cases. That statement goes directly to the heart of a long-running debate in American government. Where does presidential authority end, and where should Justice Department independence begin? For Blanche, the relationship appears to be much more closely connected than his critics would prefer. But there is another important part of his answer. Blanche said he does not expect President Trump to ask him to do anything unlawful or unethical, and he made clear that if he believed a presidential request crossed a legal line, he would push back. That distinction matters, because Blanche is not saying that the president can simply order the Justice Department to do anything he wants. He is saying something more complicated. He does not believe the Attorney General should make a blanket promise that the department will operate independently of the president, and that difference could become extremely important as the Trump administration moves forward. Remember the timing. Blanche has only just entered the job. The Senate confirmed him by a vote of 50-49, with Democrats voting against his nomination. That means he is beginning his tenure under an intense political spotlight. And now, during his first week in office, he has publicly defined his relationship with the president in a way that is already generating controversy. For Republicans supporting the administration, Blanche's position can be viewed as a straightforward recognition of presidential authority. After all, the president is elected by voters and sits at the top of the executive branch. But critics see something very different. They argue that the Justice Department needs a meaningful degree of independence precisely because it has enormous power over federal investigations and legal cases. That is why Blanche's answer matters beyond one television interview. This is really a question about institutional power. If the president has a voice in individual cases, how far should that influence go? What happens when the president and Justice Department leadership disagree? And who decides when a request crosses the legal or ethical line? Those questions are now sitting directly in front of the Trump administration, and there is another development that makes Blanche's comments even more politically significant. He also defended D.C. U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro after President Trump criticized her handling of a case involving the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool. Blanche said Pirro should not be judged based on that single matter and expressed support for her work. That exchange provides another glimpse into the relationship between the White House and the Justice Department. The president has made his expectations clear on a number of issues, and the Attorney General is now signaling that he intends to work closely with the president, while still maintaining that he would resist if he believed a request violated the law. That balance could become one of the defining issues of Blanche's tenure. Because the Justice Department is not just another cabinet agency, its decisions can affect elections, public officials, federal investigations, major corporations, and individuals across the United States. That gives the Attorney General enormous responsibility. And it also explains why a single sentence about independence can trigger such a major political reaction. The controversy is not simply about Todd Blanche personally. It is about a fundamental question in the American system. How should executive power interact with federal law enforcement? Historically, Justice Department independence has been treated as an important institutional principle, even though the department remains part of the executive branch. That creates a delicate balance. The president appoints the Attorney General. The Attorney General leads the Justice Department. But the department is also expected to apply federal law based on facts and legal standards rather than political loyalty. Blanche's comments have placed that balance under a microscope. And now the next question is not what he said on television. It is what happens when a real disagreement reaches his desk. Suppose the White House strongly supports one position, and Justice Department lawyers believe another position is legally stronger. What happens then? Blanche says he would push back if necessary. But how often will that happen? How public will those disagreements become? And will the Attorney General's approach strengthen presidential control over the Justice Department, or create a new model for how the department operates inside the executive branch? Those questions cannot be answered yet, and that is important. There is no evidence from these comments alone that Blanche intends to ignore the law or abandon professional standards. In fact, he explicitly said the opposite. But his refusal to pledge independence is still a significant political signal. It tells Washington that he does not view complete separation from the president as a requirement of his position. And that could have consequences far beyond this week, because the Justice Department will face politically sensitive decisions throughout the administration. Every major investigation, every high-profile federal case, every dispute involving presidential authority could bring the same question back into the spotlight. How much influence should the White House have, and how much independence should the Justice Department exercise? For now, Todd Blanche has given Washington an answer. He will not make a blanket pledge of independence from President Trump. But he also says there is a line he will not cross. If he believes the president asks for something unlawful or unethical, Blanche says he will push back. That is the tension at the center of this entire story. Presidential authority on one side, Justice Department independence on the other, and Todd Blanche standing directly in the middle. The real significance of his first week may not be what happened during one television interview. It may be what happens the next time the White House and the Justice Department face a serious disagreement, because that is when these words will be tested. And if those disagreements become more frequent, more public, or more politically consequential, this debate could become one of the defining stories of the Trump administration. For now, one sentence has opened a much larger conversation about power, independence, and accountability in Washington. Todd Blanche was asked whether he would pledge that the Justice Department would operate independently of the president. He refused. And now America will be watching closely to see what that decision means in practice. If you want to stay ahead of the biggest developments in U.S. politics, subscribe now, because this story is far from over.